In section 3 of module 3, we're going to be covering mapping value. Now, this comes from Blue Ocean Strategy, Red Ocean Strategy. And it's all about how you change value in itself. Now, sounds hard, sounds difficult, but it's not as hard as you think. So what we're going to do is take a much deeper dive into how you can re-engineer value through your products and services. And this is a famous book and practice. One of the things it focuses on is rethinking actually what's needed within a market. And the goal within this is to actually create either new markets or open up totally new customer segments by developing products and services to customers that can't maybe either afford it or re-engineering it so it can be scaled very quickly. And we're going to have a look at that in a lot more detail. Let's take a look at Tesla. This is a value map for Tesla. What did Tesla change compared to other cars in the market? It knew it wanted to outperform value in a number of different aspects. So it started to look at what are the things, how do people measure performance and value for a car? And in terms of those factors, they started to look at things like acceleration, performance of the car, what was going to be the top speed compared to other electric cars in the market, what was the range of the car, how fast do they have a charging time, were the other cars stylish or just plain or just damn ugly, what's the brand, how well established and focused were they on developing their brand within the marketplace. Did they still need gasoline? Were they hybrids? Was there free charging? And was there a level of an exclusivity, a feeling of that? These are the dimensions that they mapped for existing cars. And they decided to change the performance along those values by developing the Tesla. So, Elon Musk said, clearly we must have a fast charging time to make it easy for our customers. We want a top speed that outperforms anything else. So these factors slowly, when you look at them in isolation, don't seem as though they make much of a difference. But you put them all together and it absolutely transforms clearly how you can measure and look at your innovation and then start to innovate against those performance criteria. So as soon as you say we want to outperform on top speed and you measure your competitors, you know you've got a benchmark position from which you can set the performance that you want to measure, that you want to achieve. Acceleration, likewise. Charging times can be measured. You can actually then say, I want to do better than that, like Tesla. Value maps provide a very tangible way of understanding value versus competitors. So what is value innovation? The value innovation focuses on competing in new markets. And what's called a red ocean is where everybody's just pretty much competing based on the same value parameters, the same areas, to the same level of performance as everyone else. And the problem with that is it reduces the opportunity for margins and growth. On the other hand, if you can focus on a new set of customers, on opening up a new market, it makes the competition irrelevant. You can actually create and capture new customers, new demand. You can break away from the normal trade-off, value versus cost. In other words, you can make more margin, you can make more revenues. And the other thing then is you can obviously start to scale a business. So markets, in terms of the value innovation process, are either red or blue. And the focus is on creating new value, understanding it. So let's take a much look at red oceans. In red oceans, customers, everybody's competing for the same set of customers. And that means as a market develops, more and more suppliers come into the market. Pricing tends to be the obvious way of competing. And that means it gets fierce. Everybody's looking at then driving down their costs and finding it harder and harder to make money. And it becomes the value cost trade-off. How much can we lower our prices? How far can we drive down or improve our efficiencies? On the other hand, if you have a blue ocean, you create a whole new set of offers. And you improve this idea of price versus performance. There tends to be less competition. And more importantly, if you create a new market, you can often dominate it, as Tesla did. So here's another value map. And here we can see the Nintendo Wii. And we've mentioned it before, but what Nintendo did, it mapped each area, all the factors that come into play in consideration with a console, a gaming console. It knew that it didn't want to be at the same price level, for instance, as Sony PlayStation or Xbox One. It knew that it needed, in order to achieve those prices as well, it would obviously need a less high-end chip for the graphics. Maybe it didn't need 5.1 Dolby surround sound. The console specification itself could be a lot simpler. The level of complexity then would be less. Although it needed CPU speed, it didn't need to be as fast as the others. And then where it introduced new value was by introducing the motion control and making it super easy from a design perspective to use. They knew they were never going to compete on the number of games, so they focused heavily on very popular games like Super Mario. And they introduced this idea of making it for families, whereas gaming was traditionally focused on single player. So they dynamically changed their value, and once they set out this value map, they went ahead and started to develop the Nintendo Wii, which was hugely successful. So by re-engineering value, by benchmarking the value of current propositions in the marketplace, you can clearly set some parameters around which you want to innovate. They become the components that drive you towards your innovation goal. Here's another example. Cirque du Soleil, which offers the best of both circus and theatre. Now, if we were saying a value map of the traditional circus, how does the value map change for Cirque du Soleil? Notice that they've removed some of the factors that prevent others from scaling. If you take a star performer, for instance, traditionally many circuses had star performers. The problem with that is, if you wanted to operate in more than one country, scale across the world, as Cirque du Soleil did, you couldn't rely just on one performer. That would never work. If you wanted animals, there were so many restrictions in transporting animals around the place, so relying on animals became a no. They had to remove it or minimize it. And so they completely re-engineered. And now there are thousands of Cirque du Soleil performers and thousands of shows given all over the world. And they've created and expanded into a new market. So how do we do this? How do we innovate on value? So you've got this idea already that you can eliminate factors that completely, like Cirque du Soleil, taking out the star performer. You can increase the level of value that you're looking to achieve, like Tesla did with its performance and its acceleration. You can create factors that the industry hasn't offered before, like gaming for families, that the Nintendo Wii did. And maybe you also start to reduce factors like Nintendo. You don't need as much of a high CPU, which then enables you to offer your product or service at a lower cost. So mapping out existing value is a critical element. Choose one of these methods against each of the factors. How does that play out versus the current offers in the marketplace? Consider how those changes change the overall value proposition. Can it be done? Can you actually, once you've mapped all this out, create a service against those parameters? Can you make it still desirable, sold and marketing? This is a very different approach, but it is highly beneficial in terms of rethinking the value in a marketplace. There is a canvas for this, which can be used. This is a strategy canvas, which helps you map out areas that you can raise, reduce, create, or eliminate. Now, another way of looking at value was developed, and it looks at it as a pyramid. And what we can see is there are various levels within this pyramid. This is the Bain, and Bain are a consultancy, international consultancy, and they did a lot of research, and I've left the bookmark down there. But basically, this helps you focus on what you are considering in terms of value. And there are functional value, which is pretty much what an executive team would look at, and their goals and ambitions would be driven by improving the top line, reducing costs within the organisation, improving the quality of the product, scaling the business, and obviously innovating. That agenda of value, functional value, is very much down to the executive team. They set the strategy as to how they would achieve those. But in terms of the next level, this is much more operational. And this is where you can start to think about how and what are the ways in which your clients or customers want to see or improve service levels or services and buy them. So productivity, do they need to improve things in terms of timing? Do they want to make things easier, less effort? Is there hassles that they need to reduce? Is there information that isn't very easily gained at the moment? And what about relationships? Often relationships in business-to-business environments are critical. Do they need more expertise? Do they need training, for instance, as part of the value proposition? This is all different ways of looking at value in a marketplace. And clearly, every time we look at a value proposition, what we're trying to link it to is the customer. So expressing value in a way, either as a factor through the value innovation, or as a method to develop value propositions, we need to put it in a language that our customers can understand. In this next section, what we're going to do is take a quick way of assessing a market. There is a traditional way of doing it, which is looking at total accessible market, all the way through to the smaller areas of what is actually achievable. So in this process, we look at market sizing, market trends, market growth rates, profitability, industry structures, a typical sort of breakdown of information that we need to be able to work through the opportunity that we have. At the top level, we have this idea of what a total market is worth. So this could be a sports car market, for instance. A service addressable market is that part of the market that your service or your product is particularly aimed at. And then the service obtainable market is the possibility of what share of market you are able to realistically reach. A lot of people overestimate what is potentially achievable. So this model, and it's very simple, just helps you understand the context of the total market. And then when you're developing a business model, one of the things you're looking to do is always ensure that you understand the market potential and be able to translate that somehow into a revenue opportunity, and from there into a profit opportunity. I've included here the different calculations. So typically within business, it might be the number of accounts in the market, which you can find out through market research. And you can also look at the potential market share that's possible. There are easier ways, particularly when you're doing with new innovations, to start thinking about how you can model some costs from the bottom up and equally from the top down. So, if you've got a new product or service that you're looking to develop, you can give an estimated price to that. Sometimes you can look in the market and actually find out what others are already using as a benchmark price. Then you can look at the estimated total number of potential customers. Obviously, you're not going to get the total number of potential customers. In the first year, you will only get a certain percentage, a small share. So by multiplying each of those through, you can get to an estimated revenue quite quickly. The other way of working it is from the top down. What do you want to achieve with your product or service in terms of revenue goals for a year? What's the average price of your product? And then you can see the number of unit sales you would need annually. And based on that, you can then understand how many customers you need based on how many they might buy. So those are just different methods of understanding how to size a market. Very quick, very easy. The first one takes a bit more research. This one can be just a guide, an estimation that might help you. So let's just recap on module 3. We talked about scaling. How can you change your business model to make it scale faster? And clearly, scaling is a critical factor versus linear growth. What are the bottlenecks? So what are the areas? It's often within an organisation, it might be one or two resources or activities or processes that are preventing you from scaling quickly. Customer insights. How and what strategy we're going to use. Can we use the customer profile template? How can we build out a clearer idea of our customers? Value mapping. What are the factors we can change? Either eliminate, create, or reduce that can help guide us towards creating a new product or service. And then finally, what's the market potential? How do we actually understand the market that we're aiming at? What's the total market potential for the future? So those are just some of the things and questions that we need to ask. And hopefully you'll have got a much better understanding of the opportunities and methods used